Hey, what's good everybody? Welcome to the channel. My name is Alckemy and today we're going to be using the Hapax brought to us by Squarp Instruments, to which thank you, to showcase a workflow on how to start a track with a sequencer, both in terms of melodics and in terms of drums. So you don't have to have the Hapax in order to do this, although I will be sequencing with some unique effects just to kind of explore and have some fun. With that being said, it's more of the approach and the mindset that I'm hoping that you take away from this to use the hardware as a sketch tool and then go off on the deep end to try to find other things via resampling or applying effects or just finding your own way through. So if that seems interesting, subscribe to the channel. What we're going to go ahead and do is hop right into this, and I am going to start by saving this, and then we are going to go into a brand new patch. Am I sure? I am sure. All right, so from a blank slate, the first thing that I want to do is get into a scale, and I am going to go into, let's say, I don't know, F minor, perhaps Phrygian. That's what we always do. And it's the scale that I like the most. So let me go to the minor here and start like this. And mind you, in case if you were wondering, you're going to see a second screen over here on this side. This is the Bitwig / phase plant stuff. So if we were to swap over here to the DAW, I've already got a couple of sounds that are ready to go. Just a cool bell that we'll be starting with here when we get into the melodics, and then also some drums that I made right before I started this video, which sound like this. Nothing too crazy, but some stuff that we can utilize to help get the gears turning and get started with what it is that we're wanting to do. So one thing that could be super important is to figure out how to actually get this thing to get sounds inside of Bitwig. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab the first sequence over here, and I am going to hold this down, and we're going to scroll through this with the other one until it says USB device. This is really important because it needs to be to device, because that's going to send this out. I've tried host, that doesn't work. Also, if you're on Bitwig 6, I have not been able to get any of my MIDI controllers to work with the beta, but obviously it's a beta. It'll be fixed by the time the new version rolls around. Yeah, cool. So I'm going to turn myself up just a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't go into clipping and everybody clicks off the video, but what can you say? Let's go ahead and bounce back into here and we will continue. Once more time, because I just realized that I showed you that here. Hold the track down, USB audio. You start from here, A, scroll over. That shouldn't take too much time to go through to figure out how to do that. And if we did everything correct, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and go all delete. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the algorithm now, and we're going to set a key range on here. And what I'm going to do is hold this down, this encoder, and move this all the way down to say C2. Let's go F2, and then we'll set this up to F7. And so you can see now that we've got a length here. We can set the length to a little bit more, maybe like 4, a wider velocity range around 80% in 16th notes. We are going to make this a little bit faster. It's going to sound kind of kooky at first, but whenever we start slowing it down with the pitch retiming and the effect processing, we should be there, or we should be on our way. So yeah, spoilers ahead. Let's go ahead and generate something. And even though you don't see anything here over on our piano roll, we can kind of scroll down and see that we've actually got something in here. So let's go ahead and see what that is. Okay, a little bit silly, but let's go ahead and maybe try one more time. Cool. So I think it's really important to have the expectation that you're not just going to hit this and it's going to create magic for you on the spot. Sometimes you might get lucky, but I don't usually think that is a very fair way to, how do you say, like, I don't know, go about this. And if you did everything, or if it did everything for you, then there would be no point to us having fun, right? So one thing that I will do is I'm going to take this and scroll this down an octave. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to kind of keep my eye out for any other notes that seem like they're too high and bring them back down to where they're in a closer key range. So So all I'm doing is I'm holding the arrow key over here and I'm moving that down with the octave. Sounds a little bit better, but there's a lot more that we can do. So I know that I talked about slowing this down whenever we get into audio, but even though this doesn't have a set time division scalar type deal like the other sequencers that I've used, there's a couple of other options that we have. The first one that we can do is go into the BPM and change the elasticity here. I usually don't like to mess with this though, so what I'm going to do instead is go back, accidentally hit undo. I did not mean to do that. I'm going to hold second, hit redo. And I am going to come back into the sequencer here to where we see the piano roll. I'm going to hold all. I'm going to start hitting the plus and minus button to spread this out just a little bit. And so now you can see that everything's kind of moved a little bit. And what we can do is shift it back over to the 1, which it doesn't really need to be on the 1 to be honest, but it's more of just kind of rotating everything and kind of we're stretching it out and then rotating it to where it's going to smear the notes a little bit more. Cool, starting to get there. Now what I want to do is we can play with some of the other stuff here, to which I think that this is a cool spot to maybe go off of. So I'm going to hit snapshot on this. There we go. And now whatever I change to this, if I want to ever come back to the steps here, I can just go and hit the snapshot button because I want to explore a little bit more. So rather than regenerate a brand new melody, what I want to do is go over to the shuffle here and we can kind of rearrange these notes that sound kind of good as a collection, but maybe might not have the best melody. And so with this, I'm going to hit apply and then we'll start to just listen to this, how the notes will kind of move themselves around. I'm going to hit all, or come out of the algorithm, hit all, and we're going to move everything down just a little bit. It's actually kind of cool. A little bit more mysterious, a little bit darker. Now let's go ahead and work with some of the effects on here. And so one thing that I'm going to try is turning on the R poly. And basically what this does is it will become, how do I say, it's like an extra sequencer that will play multiple notes at once. And then you also have some sequences on here that can kind of jump or randomize or set to a specific interval. So we'll leave this on normal or off rather, equals. I actually don't know what some of these mean, but within this, we can kind of do some other cool things that we can toggle on and off because we don't want to use this the entire time. So maybe I'll set this to 12. Maybe I'll set this to -9. And let's just listen to it. If these two jump out of key, then we'll just play with the octaves. Now, it would be cool if with something like this, if we could change the timing of it, because obviously it's kind of going at that 1/16th or whatever. But I mean, I wonder if we set this just to off and see what that does. I'm still learning about how this works, but it is interesting to see how everything is working together. And this is just something that we don't have to keep, but it's something that we can toggle on and off, which might come into play here in a minute with the other stuff that I'm going to show you. We've also got swing over here, which is pretty nice. This can add some humanization on this. because it already has a little bit of off timing with whatever it is that we did with the stretching, or the warping is what they call it, but that's kind of cool as well. Something else that we can do is we can turn on the shaper. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is grab the scaler, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate why the scaler exists, especially for something like the shaper. So if I turn this on, and we're going to hit stick up, and we'll hit F follow scale, which is F Phrygian. Now, whatever comes through here is going to, regardless of what we do to the change of this, is going to make sure that it stays in scale. And so when we go to the shaper here and we start changing this with the bend, what it's going to do is start manipulating the notes and start curving, almost kind of like key tracking. If you've ever seen that within a curve, I know that Current has it. I know that Bitwig has it. I think Vital has it. To where like if you have a key follow, but the cool thing about this is that you can kind of create almost like either a curve or an S shape or different stuff. And so let's go ahead and mess with that and see if anything comes out that's kind of interesting. And so I actually just learned something. I didn't realize this, but on this, with some of these, if you push the encoder, then sometimes you might get a different thing. So I am curious if we toggle this back on and we set this. Ah, there we go. So now, okay, we can actually change the speed of this. Although it's not letting me actually change the speed. So that's interesting. Maybe second? Yeah, so in order to change this, we have to hold second. Nice. Learn something new every day. And so it looks like you, within these tracks here, you've got 4 different tracks, or 8 different tracks, but it doesn't look like you can change the timing of all of these. Or maybe it works in a different way. So we'll probably have a dedicated video on this at another point in the future, but it's kind of nice to just kind of mess with that and see what can come out. But I will tell you that if the scaler was off, then this would actually be doing things that are way out of key. So and it's kind of cool that this just is like super free form with how you want to shape this. And you can set this to be anything outside of this. So you can set it to velocity, pitch bend, aftertouch, CC controls, etc. But we'll just kind of leave that on the keys and go ahead and shut that off for now. But I want to show you this option in case if you're wanting to harmonize or do other cool things with this. Cool. So we're almost ready to get into the recording or to get into the other fun stuff with this. But one final thing that we want to talk about that I didn't mention in the other video is the harmonizer. So we need to make sure that the transposition of this on track 16, this is very specific, is turned on to match chord. And what this is going to do, and this is why this says TRSP on track 16, is follow or make the other tracks follow the keys of what we're playing here. And this is a really neat feature that I haven't seen in another sequencer. I know that the new Oxy One Mark II has a cool performance mode as well, but I don't know if it works in the same way. We'll figure that out soon enough. But now if I'm playing a key on here, then the arpeggiator and the melodies and stuff that we have are going to follow whatever key that I'm playing. So check this out. Which is pretty sick. And so because of that, we can get a lot of different diverse expressions from what it is that we're trying to pull out. So I have one more trick for you, by the way. What we're also going to do is we're going to hold track 1 and see how this says 1. Instead of having it run straight, we are going to set this to random beat. And every 4th beat or whatever is going to play something random. And so now, as opposed to the same sequence that we got, it's going to kind of jump around the playhead and play back whatever it is wherever the playhead lands on. This is one of my favorite things about sequencers. Basically what this is called is something not so different than a fugue machine. And you can have multiple playheads running if you basically map the same MIDI track across different tracks to the same output and change the playhead of each one so you can get some really complex chords and stuff. We're not going to explore that today. Maybe I will in another video, but for the sake of just trying to maintain the momentum of exploring with this, this is kind of like, you know, one cool way that you can manipulate whatever is going on. So let's go ahead and hit play and see what that sounds like. On track 1, I'm going to go back to step. I'm going to hit all. I'm going to try to make this play just a little bit slower. Right now it sounds all kind of ridiculous, I know. But for one, it's really fun just to mess with and to see what this thing can do and can come up with. However, now that we have a little bit to work with on here, I'm going to start going into the DAW and designing and manipulating the sounds that I have in which to get something that is going to be a little bit more interesting on that. So the next part is kind of this duality aspect of it, because while the sequencer is running, I could start tweaking a preset or something and start engaging in, you know, hearing something that hopefully will spark. One major thing about this that I always have going on is rolling sampler. And rolling sampler is probably the biggest key player within all of this stuff that I'm showing you. This is a plugin by Birds Things. It's the best $20 that I've ever spent. But everything that I just did, as you can see, has a recording here. And what I can do is just take this and drag it out. And the way that this works, not that I want to do a tutorial on rolling sampler again, but right now it's writing to the RAM of my computer, and every 2 to 10 minutes, depending on what duration you set it to, actually I think 30 seconds to 10 minutes, this is just kind of rolling along, and whatever you hear, whatever comes in is basically like retrospective recording, but for audio. Whatever does not get pulled out is just overwritten, and whatever you do pull out goes to a specific folder that you specify within your computer. So I have this incredibly large library of sounds that are ever growing with stuff. In the same way that I made these drums earlier before I actually went live, or started recording rather, was also in rolling sampler. As you can see, it says BB, 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 BB. It would be nice if we can maybe do like a master name or something for whatever it is that we're recording, for the sake of organization and keeping time. Although I will say that this actually does tell you the date of when this was recorded and what BPM, but 25.9.3, as you can see. So there is that, but it's also just a lot of numbers and stuff to remember. So with that being said, let's go ahead and we're going to hit play again, but I'm going to start to manipulate the patch in order to start trying to get different sound variations. And if I hear something that jumps out at me or whatever, I can use all these tools to start being like, I'm tired of the sequence. Let's generate something new. Okay, that was kind of cool. Let's try something else. And we're going to have this relationship of where everything moves together. So let me just demonstrate what that looks and sounds like to me. Changing the octave now. I really like that. That do 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 do. So now I'm going to go ahead and on this, I'm going to switch the elasticity to make that play. Oops. About half speed. We're going to set a filter envelope on this now. And I'm going to put this behind all the other stuff. We're going to duplicate the OTT. Then I'm going to grab low shelf. Then we can go back to the live here and start to play that same note and the same things over this, but perhaps change the key or change the pretty. Forgive me, I was playing the wrong sequencer just now. Now, one cheat code that you can do while we're having fun recording this is use another plugin, one of my favorite plugins actually, which is called Beam. And what this does is acts as an annular effect that you can honestly just toss into random a bunch. Like there are factory presets. There are actually factory presets that I've made. But it has all of these different modules that are built in to this that you can either use as your granular or as a convolution or even as distortion. But really, like late as of late, I just throw this into the magic wand, which will generate a completely random preset for you that's not saved within your library. There is an algorithm to it. I think it's based off of the source preset that you use, but as you continue to mangle it, it'll keep generating something new. So now this is going to sound completely different, but before I do that, I'm going to grab a fuse compressor, and we are going to grab a clipper, and I'm just going to pull the release down on this and bump this up a little bit to raise the volume. It's just something that I do. And then let's see what this sounds like. I don't know what it's going to be, by the way. It's kind of cool. And even though this melody is really simple, I really like the sounds that it provides. Cool. And so now I'm just gathering material with just a few different effects and whatnot. At some point, I definitely want to revisit this again and show you all the stuff with my pedals and all of those effects and just have a heyday with the jam part. But for the sake of not trying to make this video too long, I would like to continue just working with you on, all right, so now we got some melodic material, which we'll start mangling here in a second. But now let's get into the drum patterning stuff that we can start to build different sketches with this for. So let's go ahead and go to the quick kit on here, which again, we're only going to use 8 of these sounds, but we can hot swap them if we need to. But the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to go into the channel here, and we're going to set this to channel 2 and set this to same. And the reason why is because I don't want this track over here working or making sounds with the other stuff. And one very important thing on this is that we need to hold track 2, and we're going to go to step here. We need to hold track 2. It's already on MIDI 2, but we need to set this to go to USB device. And the other thing is that while holding step, we need to change this over here into drum mode. And furthermore, we also need to make sure that this track is not being pitch quantized. As of now, I think that's off. I can't tell which side of the knob is always confusing. Okay, so it's off. So because this is not pitch quantized, it means that track 16 is not going to do the chord matching. And that's important because otherwise we would be getting a bunch of different sounds that it would be trying to replicate and vice versa. Now, one thing I'm actually curious about is I wonder if... Okay, so it looks like you only get 8 steps with this. Something that I would like to see in the future is at least 16, so that way it could match the full framing of a typical drum kit or whatever, but 8 steps is enough for us to work with. Now, as you can see over here, this also has, which is a little blurry, so forgive me. I'm not quite sure if there's a way that I can do that, but over here on this side, hopefully you can see that this says kick. And then we have snare and closed hi-hat and all that stuff. And if you want to get in here, you can actually relabel this right now. That says cowbell. Within this, though, one really important thing is that you don't have to rename it, but it can be great, especially if you do stuff kind of like this, which is where you start importing files and whatnot. Now, I'm not going to show you that today, but just know that it exists, that if you've got MIDI drums or patterns or whatever, that you can just import this and then get going, to which I'll be building a kit with at some point. But I think that it would be a lot more fun for me to actually just throw something together and then start getting into some of the aspects of how the track will start to develop. And I will say that for this, we're going for a loop, not necessarily like a full start to finish, but an idea to sketch and then do the resampling process like I usually do, and so forth, like you've seen on the channel and like you see whenever I go live and, all that other fun stuff. Cool. So now let's go back to track 2. And if I demo this, you're not going to hear anything. And the reason why is because over on this side, you are going to see that this is playing not the correct notes. And so I'm going to go ahead and just give you the answer here. But if you are starting within C1, which is this, then what you want to do is come over here. This is so nice, by the way. I need to get better at doing the switching. What you want to do is go into this. Sorry, go into this. And let me see, go all. There we go. My bad. And we are going to change this to 43. Now within 43, this should have all the notes that we need. Sweet. So what people usually do is they usually start with a kick, right? Or they might go like, do something like this. I wouldn't recommend that, especially not for the kinds of beats that I make. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play up here for now, and I'm going to show you some of the micro timing features to where we can start building in increments to where I want to kind of play off of different patterns with the percussion first. So let's play with that. We're going to set this to here. I wanted to see if I held this down, if the micro timing would go to 1%. So that's why I kind of spent a couple of seconds on that. But what we're going to do is just try to create an offset pattern and play off of that. So now if we hit play, there we go. So now that we have something like this, we can actually hold all three of these and move this even further if we want to, or even all four. Or what we could also do is hold this and move this all a little bit later. Cool. Now we can start with the snare. Now, listening to this clap here, this thing, as you can see, I'm going to scroll over here, is really important because you'll see that if you can look here, that the fundamental of this, or the actual transient, the main meat of the clap, doesn't start until here. And so what we want to do is we want to grab this, and we are actually going to move this early. So now, a little bit earlier maybe. So if the timing overlaps on this, then it's not going to play both kicks, which I find to be pretty interesting. So now that we have something like that, we can continue to add upon this, or we can start to variate it with different things. For me personally, I try not to do like that. You can, and there is a tool for that. So if we go into algorithm and we go into every M and you set this on this track, then what this will do for you is generate said things to where you go apply and you do something like that. For me personally, I don't like to do that because I'm really big on trying to create spaces, you know, spaces that have a lot of negative or silence rather in between. And so that's what helps me create a lot of syncopation. But even still, this is just a nice little starting point, because what we can do now is go into this and we can do this and hold copy and do that, and then hold paste and do that. And so now within this, I do believe, maybe not, did it do it? Here, copy this, copied pattern 1, track 2, paste pattern 2 to pattern 2. Okay, so that says 2 patterns. Maybe this is 16 different tracks or so. But within pattern 2 now, if we go back into the step mode, we can change this and create a variation from this. So we can do something to where we offset this. We can kind of just jam again and create different variations for this. Trying to roll this. Just make it super late. And then right here, we can do a roll. Hold that for a sec. Maybe 1/64th. And I don't know if you noticed that or not, but I was able to actually transpose this without this moving to a different note or a different lane. And so sometimes this can be kind of cool, because this is one way to kind of switch this up. So if I wanted to, I can go to this transposition like this. Okay, so what this is actually doing, less so than what I thought, is that it's just changing the note with this. And so that actually opens up some different doors, even though the pitching of this doesn't change the way that I thought. Sorry, I'm still learning about this. But because of this, we can swap this to a different sound. And you can kind of think about this like parameter locking in some cases, or even sample locking if you have a huge range of things, because while the kick pattern and stuff is on here, this can essentially be anything. And so as you can see right now, I actually have this and this to where they're different note placements. I can just bring this back and be like, let's just do that one instead, right? Which is kind of nice. I'm going to hold this and give this the full length. And so now we've got a cool little pattern variation. And now what we can do on this as well is, I'm going to play that one. is we can start to create a more so of a roll now. And what I'm realizing now is what I should have done is just have one single lane here for different hi-hats and whatnot. But even still, we can still change this to some other stuff. So even just these two creates a little bit of variation with this that we can move on. So I'm gonna move this really late, maybe early. So one major mistake that I made with this is that I actually hit all and set the timing of this to be here. And I didn't realize that these have their own separate timings if you do all versus here. Like, I'm curious if this is going to sound different or not. Maybe not, but even still, you want to be careful, because if you do this and you set this micro timing over on here, it is going to shift everything. So check, see how that moved the entire, just basically the entire project. So when you're doing things, or you want to do like a track delay or something, just go by lane, even if it means that you have to do like 3 or 4. I think that it's actually more worth it to do that, because you're going to have a better sense of control over what you're doing. So now that we have a couple of patterns, we can go back into the launching, right? Cool. So within this, now we're kind of getting into something to where we've got a couple of beats and variations to work with. And so what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to record these out. And then we're going to just apply some very basic effects and try to get some interesting sounds to go with this. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, because normally most of the meat and potatoes with me designing stuff to get this idea is generally with lots of patience and timing and resampling with what we're doing. But even still, this is some cool stuff that we have to work with, in which to start drawing inspiration from and trying to create offspring or variation, right? So with that being said, we can even take something like this. And what I'm going to do is move all this all the way over. And I'm just going to stretch this out. Let me switch back over to here. Pull this off. And I'm going to set this into repitch mode. And as you can see now, we've got this like kind of cool variation with whatever this was. So I really like the first part of this. So like this, like whatever this is. And now what I can do is start to get into my creative flow of trying to create other variations from here. So I'm just going to drag this over and see if we can get something interesting off of that. And then now within this, we can actually use this as something that is kind of like a tempo keeper, because we can kind of just layer this over kind of like so. And within this, we can start to do a couple of different options. Like we can either try to build off of this drum groove that we made. Personally, I usually don't work within MIDI, but now that we have a loop, it's super malleable and there's a lot of different variations that we can play off of. That being said, you can just keep the original loop and try to harmonize with it and get into your other stuff. But I really wanted to showcase how somebody like me would work with these things, just because it gives you some insight into like what I was talking about with a video that's coming out here in the future, which is don't try to make this your centerpiece. Don't try to make this thing like your end all be all. This is a sketch tool. It's more so of a matter of just catalyzing ideas in which to either A, start a track, or B, just like spend time doing sound design and gather ideas, or C, which is just have fun jamming. Like I haven't really made anything yet that I'm like, wow, this is my next track, this is my next banger, but I'm having a great time explaining while I'm working and talking you through how something like this works, right? So within that, I'm going to put the convolution on this now instead. And we are going to grab a filter plus, and then maybe a gate and a clipper. And then maybe like something like this. Okay, so there was some really cool stuff within this. Even though it sounded kind of insane and stuff, even pulling this back out, we can start to pull from this as we you know, it's a little bit abrasive and a little bit crazy, but we can kind of do this again. And even add to this, you know, so. Maybe with this, I would want to set this instead of triplets to something like this. And then set this, reset this like this. So now we're kind of coming up with a different line for this, right? So if we listen to this now, we can use something like the compactor for a quick sidechain. And we're just going to go into the first one here. And then I don't really want a bunch of space on here, so I'm going to use something like extractor. And then something else that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this time shift here and move this over as well. And keep this in mind, by the way. I want to make it very apparent that I'm flying by the seat of my pants. This is just stuff that I'm improvising, and it doesn't really matter where this road goes, because whether it's pass or fail, it's always the same, usually the same process with very minimal changes in between. And so I think that it's important to try to build up a flow that you know isn't always necessarily going to have 100% success rate, but more so as a means of practicing and developing while you work, in which to, you know what I mean, hone your skills. And also just like have fun making the beat. It doesn't really matter if it's going to be great or not. So with that, let's go ahead and maybe make this a little bit shorter. And let's give this a shot. Interesting. So now that we have something like this, we can actually go back and modify the pattern now. So I'm going to switch over to here, and we have a bunch of those hats and whatnot. I'm going to copy this, and we will paste this order of operations here and go back into the step here. And we are actually going to pull off of some of the things on here to not have so much busyness going on. So now we can kind of let some of this stuff take over and figure out how we can find an interpolation between, or rather a better relationship between some of these rhythmic sounds that we have. Right. So one thing that I might want to do is shorten this up a little bit. And same thing for this. Doesn't really matter. We can just do that. And let's see what that sounds like. And I want everything to be very short, very techy. And then now we can kind of play with some of this other stuff that we've created and see if any of this is interesting over the top. So I'm going to take out this one. We're just going to kind of move some of this stuff around and try to space it out and see if we can create a better relationship with the items that we have. And then we can kind of, instead of try to come up with a new idea, we can duplicate what we like and then variate off of that. So one thing that I'm going to do here is instead of leave this way, I'm going to move this off, kind of like so. And there's this ta-ta. And so instead we can Command J, Command R, or sorry, just R. Sorry, Command V, then R. And we can kind of just play off of that. Again, I'm just kind of searching for vibes. We can do something like this to where we move everything off a beat. So let's do one more beat. And that's kind of the thing that you're going to have to keep in mind whenever you are playing with the sequencer, is that because this is loop based, I mean, something that we essentially could do is we can double this. So I think that if we go to here and we go to all, and then we go this, I think that doubled everything, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. No, that stretched out. I think that if we just do this length 16, 32 bars, and then we go all, copy, next page, paste, all paste. Then I know that there's some keyboard shortcuts here that we can utilize to where we go copy all copy, move over, paste. How do I do this? Maybe something like this. No, because that selects the entire thing. So, there's, like I said, I know that there's a thing on here that allows us to double this. That's the shift. That's the move. Okay, we'll figure it out another time, but just know that that's a possibility. Instead, what we could do is I'm going to grab a recurrence on here. We'll set the kick to off here, or sorry, to every other. And so now whenever this goes, it's going to go on the first one, but then on the second one, it's not going to recur. And then same thing with this. We'll set this to every fourth. So 1/4 it'll play, but we don't want it to be on the first beat. We want it to be on maybe the second beat. And we'll micro time that off. So now we'll get a little bit of variation within the pattern. go back here, 16 bars. And then right here, there's this little this nice little space. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce this and move this here. And see if I can get a reverse sound wherever that's supposed to be, because it sounds really good. So let me hit stop and then we'll hit play. Okay, so what I did by accident was I highlighted everything and moved it off a beat, and I was like, why is it doing that? So now we've got a beat that's got a little bit more groove. And within this, we can kind of switch back over to the DAW now, and we can start trying some of this other melodic stuff that we have. I mean, sometimes you can get lucky and just throw a straight loop in here and see what comes about. But what I will tell you is that don't be afraid to time stretch this into a different key. There's a lot of different ways of how you can figure out what pitch this is being transposed to if you're working within something like Bitwig. It's more so of a means of, hey, let's do something like this and let's find something that we like, and then we'll fix it later. Then we'll figure out how to harmonize with it. Then we'll figure out how to get this other stuff. So one thing I forgot to do is repitch this. That should sound very different now. Which, that's kind of cool, just as a little idea. So we can grab a fuse compressor over this. And even though the rhythm isn't quite as tight as I want it to be, or as groovy as I want it to be, it's still, again, a starting point to where we can stem this out and try again. Or, like I said, we can just have fun doing the jam. But, I mean, because now that I'm starting to hear this, we can go like bum 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 boom bum bum boom bum bum. So we can take that here, rewind it back, or sure, got the voice to make your, never mind. But we can place that here. I stretched this out twice, and so now we should get an octave lower than this section. So yeah. Now, one quick hack that you can do with this is that this is at 375.25, right? 0.249, whatever. Now, what's really cool if you've recorded everything at the same BPM is that we can actually just go to this and hit paste and then hit repitch. And now this is an easy hack to get everything kind of in the same key again. So now, in theory, this should be... If you scale it by 50%, you're going to move it up an octave. If you scale it by another 50% to 95 or whatever, that'll also move it up another octave. Kind of cool. So this might be kind of interesting as well. And really, I'm just kind of looking for like a very simple melody to work with off of these chords, you know. And it might turn out to be that maybe I don't want to do the ghost kicks on here. I might just want to utilize the, how do you say, just the kick, snare, and then let the rolls in between kind of work out. But again, I'm just kind of feeling things out and seeing what I like and what works and what doesn't work with however I'm feeling. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing and set this to repitch. And again, I don't care what key this is in. I'm just trying to see if anything interesting is in here. Cool. And this is part of the process. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Sometimes you get some really cool stuff. Sometimes you don't, but we can always go back and fish for more. You can kind of use that as something else. And as you can see, I'm like not really caring at all with where this is being placed. The only thing that I care about is what's right here. So be sloppy if you need to. Then once you kind of have your idea, you can go back. But this is a canvas for me. And usually I almost never start on bar 1 either. I'm just doing it because it just came out, but I'm almost always starting on like bar 129. So that way I can have stuff on one side and have stuff on the other side. So what if we just pitch this down? I've got this 808 here. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. And then because this is in the original pitch, I want to make sure that this is set to keyboard only, so that way we're not getting the melody from that, but okay. So what we can do with this is we can place this on the that is an audio clip, so we need a MIDI clip. That's why I wasn't doing that. And then we can just roll that off and slightly cut it around here. Now that we have that, we can duplicate this. And we've kind of come up with a cool little nice. Cool. And now that we have that, we can activate the quick hit again and see if we can kind of match the energy of that. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the velocity on this. And I'm going to go right click and go copy value to all layers, which is copy to siblings. And so that way I can actually play with velocity now, which is kind of important for what's coming about. And then now we can kind of utilize this to give ourselves a little bit more character. So Although, unfortunately, it made everything super quiet, but we'll just clip it. Cool. And so now within this, we can start to find other stuff or harmonize with other things. So I found that this is in C sharp. And so if we maybe brought this back, maybe set this to keyboard now, or we can set this to a different thing. So where now I'm playing on the scales, we can do a little bit of improvisation. So I'll set this back into the scale mode on track 16. We're going to mute track 1. And within this, the reason why I did that was because I don't want the melody playing now. I'm going to change the key of this into probably D Phrygian because of what we found. D minor Phrygian. So I want to make sure that we have that. And then we'll go back into the all ins here and see if this is going to work. On this, we need to set this into the same thing. So where we go, device. This might need to be Phrygian dominant now that I think about it, but let's just play with this and see what we can get. One thing with this is that this is also playing through all ends. And so what I'm going to do is set this to track 3. So that way I don't have to worry about that. We're going to set this to MIDI channel 3. And this is also going to go to 3. So now you know, something kind of like that where we are kind of just jamming with this and playing now. And so while we're doing this, I can continue to manipulate some of these things and kind of just have fun with playing around with, you know, the different macros and all that other stuff. But we went from creating a sequence to creating melodies to getting them in here to creating a drum beat within the sequencer. And now we're kind of in this play mode of All right, we got a 4-bar loop. I know that some of you are going to be asking, okay, well, what comes after? But that's a different skill set that I have plenty of videos for on the channel. But within something like this, it's really nice to be able to not get bogged down in, okay, now I need to just go through all of my samples, or I need to just do sound design and hope that my sound design comes through. It's more so of a means of feel your way out and like actually play with the instruments, play with the things, and create an aliveness to it, right? When you're just doing a routine, that's the hardest part, in my opinion, or like when that's like when you get stuck or when you get into your creative block, is when you get into the mundane of the routine. Now, on one end, there's some stuff that you will rely on that works. For example, I found my flow with making drums that I'm like, this works. And whenever I want to vary it, I actually take dedicated time to that to try something different. But when it comes into stuff like this, I'm cultivating all of my tools to try to get together with very simple things, by the way. Like, I know that this isn't the craziest track you've ever heard, or might not even be interesting to you, but I'm having fun, you know? These are things that I made and things that I've kind of created this diverse, with lots of inspiration and lots of help, by the way, right? So I think that it's really important to say that I didn't just come up with this by myself. I've had a lot of people guide me and help me have ideas to where I found my own way about how I do stuff. But even still, you know, I got to give those people credit. You know who you are. This is just such a fun place to be when you have something that is both physical and something that is very intuitive. And if you continue with this, or, you know, you develop one piece at a time where you get a little bit better at your sound design, then you get a little bit better at your beat making, and then you get a little bit better at your sampling and resampling, and you get better at learning, you know, a hardware synth, or, you know, the Waldorf is right next to it. We didn't use that today, but that was kind of with what I was talking about with another video that's coming out, to where it doesn't have to be the centerpiece of everything. I went from this, went to this, went back to this, gave myself, you know, some fun tricks and whatever, then deviated away. We came back, and you know what I mean? Like, it was a diverse aspect of finding and relying on these tools for exactly what it is it's just a tool, you know? You absolutely can make this the centerpiece of your workflow and all that. I think that people that are more geared towards, which is going to be ironic, so forgive me for saying this, but more geared towards like only pattern based music without a lot of like crazy nuance or like glitches and stuff. For me personally, that's where I saw not like I don't want to say a weakness, but it's something that I saw that was a necessity for me. So if you look at this, even though this is technically a loop, there's a lot of other nuance and a lot of precise timing that I've had to go back and dial in with this. And as this beat continues, if I do continue to develop it, I don't know, let me know if you want to hear the rest of this or not in the comments. There's going to be a lot of things that the sequencer isn't going to be able to provide, because I need to just post some samples and some resamples and stuff where it needs to be, you know? So that's part of learning the limitations of that gear. It's also part of figuring out how to navigate those shortcomings when you're getting stuck, as opposed to just trying to shoehorn it when, you know, it's not working out, or when you're, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I want this to do like incredible and amazing things. And I think that it absolutely can. You know, whatever we made today was very simple. Like, it seems crazy because we went through all these melodies and this was the only thing that I used, but it doesn't matter, because for one, all this other stuff are things that I can use in another project. We did use the drums, but two, it was how we got there, you know? It was how I got to just this cool little like weird sound that I really like. You know, all I took was the do do do, but I didn't have to like audiate it. I didn't have to imagine it. I didn't have to like do something that was, you know, I mean, I guess I could, but you know what I mean? Like, part of what this whole journey was about was utilizing this stuff and then being okay with taking something simple, if you will. If I guess I'm making something that's more melodic based or whatever, then I can try to take more melody and all that out of this. But it was just a jamming tool, or just a jam session, and we took one little thing that seemed to work. And that's what I do best, is I'm usually really good at finding a sound that I'm like, that's a loop, that's a thing, and then we can build off of that and come back to it, and then go back to the jamming part where we started playing keys and all that, right? It's, yeah, there's a lot to take in with this video, and I hope that you learned something with gaining some insight with this. I should probably switch over to the face, but the big picture of how all this stuff works is to try to keep yourself out of rigidity and also remember to enjoy the process and use your gear. I don't want to say sparingly, but like use your gear as a means of inspiration as opposed to like, I got an MPC and now I need to make all of my tracks, or all of my music within the MPC, and that's the only thing that it's good for. It's like, nah, man, maybe like you like using the generator in there that creates a hi-hat. Well, spend a day making hi-hats. You know what I'm saying? Spend a day making drum patterns with really crappy drums. Can you make that interesting? And then you can recall that and replace it with your better drums or whatever. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of fun with this journey, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of narrate this through, even though this video is not going to be edited, but in a way that didn't bog down, except for maybe in a couple of places. But let me know what you all think. Did you learn something? Did you have fun? Does this give you some inspiration to return to your gear? And again, I wanted to give a huge thank you to Squarp Instruments for sending me a Hapax, and I hope that I did you all justice with showcasing just some of the features of what this can do. In the future, is there anything else that you all want to see with this outside of the Oxy One review or like the Versus video? Definitely down to do this, but this is kind of like a golden standard about how I work with anything hardware or any kind of tool that I have. And this is going to be a great follow-up video. Well, depending on which one you see first, to what I was talking about with why I bought hardware. So make sure that you all are subscribed. If you want to support the channel and you like the sounds that I make, alchemy.com, or consider booking a lesson with me where we can go over this stuff again. Or, just leaving a like is really cool. There's a new YouTube feature where you can like cheer or something like that to help this video get up. That would be really cool if you can just show some very basic support. Even just leaving a comment is dope. So thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you, and have a great rest of your evening.